Welcome to The Price of Civilization, the podcast that uncomplicates the tax code and explores how the money we pay shapes the world we live in. I'm Pietro Canestrelli. I have been a tax attorney for over 27 years, first working for the IRS and for the last 20 years defending taxpayers from paying more taxes than they legally owe. Let's dive into today's episode. All right. Thank you for joining us for another episode of The Price of Civilization. And it's a podcast that wants to bring value by highlighting professionals. And I have a very special guest, someone I've known, I want to say at least 10 years, Michael. He is a CPA, but he's a very special CPA. His experience and his why are super important. So, Michael Klein, why don't you introduce, tell the audience who you are, what type of clients you serve, and what value you bring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Pietro. I'm very excited to see the launch of this and to be able to share a little bit about what has taken place in my life and led me to the point that I am with the firm. So again, yes, I'm a CPA. I've been licensed since I believe 2013 now, so about 13 years as a CPA. Just a little bit of background and history of where I came from. So I'm from this area. Grew up in Southern California. And now have a family of 3 boys, 9, 6, and 3, married since 2014. So we just celebrated our 12th anniversary with my wife, Jennifer.
Awesome.
And we've got 3 boys. So they definitely keep me busy, but it's exciting to see their growth and personality distinctives start to take shape.
Yeah, so, children, isn't it amazing how hardwired God hardwires children's personalities from birth, almost, you could say it.
It's amazing. I mean, to see, one may loves the movie Cars, and has the Cars birthday and the cars and the shirts, and the other one, could care less. He likes dinosaurs, and it's, how can you predict that, and how does that happen innately? Yeah. It just happens. So it's interesting. But yeah, so I went to school at UC Berkeley. So I graduated from there with a double major in political science, economics. Interestingly, thought I was going to go off and work at the World Bank, do international development, economics, policy making with international organizations. I worked at the United Nations State Department in DC for a while. Did an internship there and got some global experience on a study program at Berkeley in DC. So I lived there 6 months, and I got the opportunity to serve in our U.S. State Department for those 6 months and go up to the United Nations for a week and negotiate a resolution, believe it or not.
Wow.
And came back from there and then left.
What was that resolution about?
So the resolution was they call it international economic regime. So it was about commodities and the commodity exchanges and fairness in trade with commodities. And so the details now escape me, but so my role was really to support our ambassadors from DC office in research and provide comments on the resolution draft and modifications, and then send the drafts up so they could renegotiate. So I was doing that. And then toward the end of it, I actually got to go up there as part of the internship. They flew me to New York and was able to attend some of the General Assembly session and some of the committee meetings. Interestingly enough, one of our ambassadors couldn't make a meeting and asked me to sit in and negotiate on his behalf.
Wow.
So I got to sit in with, this is crazy. This was when I was 22.
22 years old.
And here I am sitting with Russia, EU, Japan, France, trying to negotiate U.S. Security policy.
A typical 22-year-old isn't going to negotiate at the local McDonald's with the vendor that gives them paper towels, let alone other countries on an international scale. What an amazing experience.
Yeah, so I'm thankful to have had it. Yeah, it's definitely a rarity. A lot of people get a lot of great experiences too, so I don't take credit for that. Some people are doing great things out there, but I do talk about that because it was a real unique experience for me, and just to be able to share that and gain the understanding that I did for how things work in government and internationally, it gave me a lot of perspective. And so from there, fast forward about 6 months, my last semester, I did a study abroad program in Africa. So I lived in Ghana and worked with our embassy and USAID on some development projects studying foreign aid effectiveness. And so I got to see kind of the inner workings of how this happens with our international foreign aid and some of the weaknesses, honestly, too. And I wrote about this in a long paper that I actually contracted with me to submit. So, all to say I was on this pathway of, okay, I'm going to go into economic research and development. And
Berkeley grad with economic degree from Berkeley. Yes. Yeah. That sounds
like. So I was going to pursue a master's in public policy or economics and kind of take that pathway. But so afterwards, I came back to this area after I graduated from up there, came back to Southern California where my roots were. And I got my first job in finance. I was a financial advisor. And I decided, and really the point of my life, I was shifting a bit because I realized if I were to pursue that pathway, which I'm not saying is bad, but I wouldn't be able to do the on the grounds hands-on work with the communities. And directly, I felt impact at the kind of the roll up your sleeves and let's get practical with some of these concepts. Right. It would be mostly because I was interviewing economists at the bank, and just the lifestyle was mostly just research. You're researching, you're publishing papers, you're not really as much on the ground implementing. So I wanted to take that skill set I left with and what God had provided in all these experiences and say, okay, how can I operationalize this in a way that now I'm working with people on the ground and businesses or nonprofits. And so that's kind of how I found my way into the CPA. And I realized that the doors would be open for me to get this license, to understand really the engine and language of business, at the fundamental level, and understanding accounting. Not stopping there, because I think CPA gives you a good base framework of understanding the engine of business and the language, but you've got to have the mindset and what is layered on there, which is that prospective way of thinking, and marry that with a true business perspective and not just a pure accounting perspective.
The key word you said is language. So to be financially literate is the start of understanding how all of this works, right? At a various scales. And you don't learn Spanish overnight. Okay. You kind of learn hello, goodbye, I would like to order this. And then, but that's just the beginning of the language, just like a profit and loss statement is the beginning of financial literacy. It's not the end of it. There's so much more involved, and you could, you could start writing poetry in the numbers if you know enough about it. And I knew you were smart. I've known you for a long time. I had no clue about this super prestigious background you have, but please go on.
Yeah. So, so I did that study program, and again, it was, I took away a lot from it. I took away a lot about perspective, right? Of living in another culture, understanding the differences in the way I grew up, and but also understanding. I think I gained an idea for what empathy really is, and understanding. Okay, people may have barriers to their economic, prosperity, true barriers. Not to say that there's responsibility there, but so I came away thinking, if I can bring some of this this knowledge that I got, this experience, and help business and nonprofit to really understand better how to translate their vision and mission into operationalize it and help them implement. So I'm very purpose driven. So that's a distinctive about me as a CPA. I'm not the typical CPA. I get big vision. I'm actually a big visionary, which is really weird for a CPA to be that way.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I love working with business and nonprofit, because everybody has a purpose to something and why they start it, right? As a venture. And how can I help come alongside and give them that advice that they want, from a CPA, that they're desiring, that they're often not getting, because a lot of traditional CPA mindset is let's just focus on the technical work and compliance, and get a tax return correct. But we're not so much conditioned to give advice along the way proactively. So I came to the point where, and after I got my license and started working at a firm and realizing, okay, I'm getting my technical training here. I need a period of competence building, foundational. And I came to the point where I realized I wanted to create something new and fresh. I was always entrepreneurial mindset and wanted to create something where there would be high impact for not only our clients, but also I want to see transformational level on our staff, how we treat our staff, mentorship programs, see them develop personally, professionally, where even if they don't ultimately stay long-term, although I want them to, coming away from working with us, I want them to be better for it. So allowing that business as a platform to really make a community impact was always my goal and vision. And so when I started this back in 2020, the quick story on that was, and it was just before the peak of the COVID year, right? So it was in July of 2020. And so COVID had just exploded on a global scale in March of that year. We just had our second son in April of that year. And so here I am, May of 2020, saying, I think it's my time. And so I was in a program called the Master's Program, which is a 3-year program started by Bob Shank about faith leaders in the marketplace, really bringing the people of faith who are operating in the marketplace a platform to understand how to make an impact that way. And so a mentor of mine had me do this. He went through it, and it really transformed my perspective about how much I can bring that into the marketplace. Those principles, serve people well with excellence and care for people, and see the fruit of it. So it was about midway through the program, I realized, which was in May of 20, that I really believed it was my time. Things were happening around me, people talking to me, hey, we think you can actually do this on your own. We'd like to bring you in. We'd like you to do the, organizations and in the community. And I'd served in the community in a lot of different ways in the past. I've been on many boards. I was on the Boys and Girls Club board for a while, served on the Oak Grove board for about a year, and just other organizations, including the Marietta Wildemar Chamber. And so I had a network of people, and they were all encouraged me to do it and to really form something new in this space. And so I did. I decided that was the time, even though all the circumstances were saying, no, what's going on? Global shakeup. It was a risk. But at the same time, a lot of people used it as a platform. But so I did. I walked out of my 5th session of the master's program, and my wife's sitting on the couch feeding our 2-month-old. And it was a break on a Zoom call because it was a COVID era. So we had it on Zoom, and I ran out and I said, hey, I think I'm going to do this now. And she says, do what? And I said, I think I'm going to quit and start the business. And so she's looking at me with, feeding the baby, and she's going, oh, okay. And I said, I gotta run back in for the session, but we'll talk later. So I ran back in, and she's looking at me like, this guy's crazy. But then later on, later on that night, we got more opportunity to sit down, and I explained myself a little bit more. And
Right.
Thankfully, she said, you know what, if this is what God's put on your heart, this is the purpose he's given, I'm going to
Yeah.
support you. And so
That is-
I talked to the team not long after that, the next week, and told them exactly what I was feeling. They were very gracious. We agreed to take a little time to make sure everything was wrapped up in good order as best as I could before I left. And I started July 1st of 2020, the new firm. So
Start of the third quarter.
Q3 of 2020. That's where I started. So
that is amazing, and that is a common theme on this podcast. Because we're talking to a lot of business owners like yourself, and this is one of the reasons. And I know you have a heart for business owners and nonprofits. I have a heart for business owners for two reasons. One is it takes an amazing amount of courage to say, I could do something better than I'm doing now. And I'm going to give up a pretty for sure salary to start my own business, to provide something that I cannot provide in this form that is better to customers and clients. And then the second thing about business owners is really bringing that, making people's lives better. You have to, in the marketplace, you have to bring the value, right, to succeed. And whether your business fails or thrives like yours, that courage to make people's lives better is such a wonderful thing that I love business owners. I just want to protect them, want to give them as much and all the information that they need to succeed. And you are an amazing resource for a growing business and a nonprofit. Talk a little bit about nonprofits, because I know that's a big part of your practice. What are the different challenges that nonprofits bring versus for-profit businesses?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And it is true. So we have a distinctive of advisory over all service lines here, but we do have a niche that we lead with, and that is serving nonprofits. And it's a very rare niche for CPAs. Most turn the other way, but that's kind of where I run to. I think it was how I was wired, like I said, purpose driven. And I saw a need and a gap and wanted to fill that with the nonprofit industry, with just a real lack of knowledge and knowledge-based resources at the time. And I still think that's true. And so, what I found it and just serving on boards of nonprofit and working with nonprofits is, which it's probably very apparent, but most nonprofits, when they start, they are the visionaries. They are the people with a grand idea, but they don't have the knowledge of the compliance requirements and reporting requirements, but also the nuanced planning tools to succeed in nonprofit finance as well, and the distinct differences between a for-profit business and a nonprofit in terms of funding sources. So I think that's the biggest difference is this: you've got this compliance piece that's that big layer added on as a public, kind of a hybrid public entity, where there's more scrutiny because you've got public interest funds and a public interest organization. But that's not quite just simple revenue source as a business. So you've got to track a lot more information financially than you would with a business typically. So it's educating them on all those different reporting requirements, compliance requirements, not only for the 990 tax returns, but also for financial reporting should they need financial statements for, say, a loan or a grant or otherwise.
So too many, I feel, and this is the educational part of the podcast, but I feel that too many people who have the charitable vision don't understand that there is a much higher level of scrutiny when you're a nonprofit than when you own your own business. And the reason is you're creating something that you don't own. Okay, keep that in mind. Number one, you don't own this. You are a custodian and you have this fiduciary duty to this. And that means that in theory down the road, you may not have anything to do with it. Your management, you may be outed as the manager of the nonprofit. Okay. You don't own the nonprofit. And too many people say, I want to form my nonprofit. This is my nonprofit. It is not your nonprofit. Nonprofit is held by the public in essence. And you're absolutely right. There's so much more scrutiny and people get in trouble when we represent nonprofits when they get in trouble with the taxing authorities, the IRS or the FDB, because there's so many footfalls that for a for-profit could be easily fixed. Okay, filing late returns, that sort of thing. That with a nonprofit, the amount of procedure is going to be a lot more because of this heightened scrutiny. So it's great. And I want you to let me know if you agree or disagree. You probably have more nuance than I agree but my view is when people come into our office talking about forming a nonprofit, I say we could form this nonprofit, but there are two other viable solutions. One is make it a for-profit. Why can't you be paid to provide this service? And do that model, because then you have the control that you think you have, that you don't have on nonprofits, and the compliance is much less. The other viable option is look around at other nonprofits that share your vision of what they want to accomplish. They always want you to, they're always short of time, talent, and treasure, right? And if you're willing to be part of that, you're still serving the charitable purpose you want to serve, but you don't have to go through all the you don't have to pay me to form up your and you don't have to pay Michael to do the 990s. You're entering. I guess what I'm trying to boil it down to is nonprofit is not a DIY first timer jump into type thing. Business isn't, but nonprofit is really not. So what do you think? Do you think I should continue to tell people that, or is there a more nuanced stance?
Yeah, I think that's a great initial an initial questioning phase to get them to reflect on why they're doing it, right?
Right.
Because most people think that oftentimes it happens like this. They have a creative idea and they say, okay, there is a seemingly charitable intent in there, that idea.
Right.
Okay, I need to form a nonprofit tomorrow and start moving. And they have no idea what that entails. And they don't consider the option of whether that could be a for-profit, right?
Right.
Because you could have the same content, outcome, goal. However, one could take a for-profit route and one could take a nonprofit route. And what I tell people is your key differential here is, one, like you said, you're going to have a lot more compliance, scrutiny, and reporting detail that you're going to have to maintain on a nonprofit. But two, the biggest difference is sources of funding and funding structure.
Right.
Because with a nonprofit, you're often held to standards of public support test standards, it's called. And so you need to prove that you're broadly gaining public support
right.
For finance in what's called the public support test on Schedule A. People are not familiar with that at all, typically. And so when I pose that to them, that starts to question, okay, yeah, I'm going to have to fundraise, and oh yeah, I'm going to have to raise money through donation. You can use what's called program fee and charge fee for service, but you've still got to prove that public support on a broader base and not just have your friends and family paying you fees. And
Right.
It could start to look like a private foundation and risk that status. So
Right.
yeah, that is a good question to ask at first glance, because people will often form them. And the number one risk and issue I see is people form them and they fail to file the required
Yes.
returns.
Yes.
And then we're coming in and they are 2 years behind or 3 years behind. Maybe they've gotten their exempt status revoked.
Right.
The Attorney General sending them letters because they failed to register.
Right.
So that's another layer that I haven't mentioned yet, but the Attorney General requirements are also another layer that you don't have with a business.
No, it's Secretary of State, and for a for-profit, it's Secretary of State articles. Your statement of information. It's a much easier lift than dealing with the Attorney General of California and all that rigmarole. And of course, when your business, is going out of business, or your entity is closing, either you've sold the business, the assets, or it's just closing, that is a much easier lift for a for-profit to close the business. And trust me, we track the hours we spend doing a dissolution of a for-profit versus a dissolution of a nonprofit.
Yeah,
a nonprofit
probably 4 to 5 times.
Yes, because you have to make sure all the assets of the nonprofit is going to another nonprofit, and you have to have a paper trail that shows all that. The other thing, and I'm sure you've run into this, is that you need to have a board, a neutral board, and you may pick people you think are in your corner, but people have different views of things, right? And it's the fight on nonprofits on the board can be very real, right? Because it's when you're a for-profit, say you're a corporation, you do have a board of directors, but you could name yourself. If you're the sole owner, you can name yourself the sole director of that board. And maybe you'll argue with yourself a little bit, but it's probably to a minimum.
On a day-to-day, yeah.
Yeah, on a day-to-day, But, I sat on many nonprofit boards. And I want to say the vast majority of the time, everybody's in a line on the purpose and how we're going to get it, and they're asking good questions because they have a fiduciary duty. But many times there is a conflict between board members, and the founder of the nonprofit could get the boot. In
That's
essence,
right.
you could say, and this is nonprofit law 101. You don't own the nonprofit. Therefore, you could be removed from the nonprofit in any capacity whatsoever. And I love my children and my grandchildren, and I want to help people through a for-profit for all the reasons you state. And another reason is I want to be able to hand that over to my grandchildren when I'm old, and not have a requirement that, I don't actually own it. So maybe I'm being selfish. There are things that you could do. There's many things, and nonprofits are wonderful, but don't come up with an idea that somehow a nonprofit is an easier task to set up and run. It is not. And many are just not in compliance at all, right? Have you run into that? They don't know how to run. They don't know they need an independent board. They don't know how to do the financials. They don't know any of this. So talk to Michael about this. So, Michael, we're coming to the end of the episode. How does a nonprofit or a for-profit or individuals, because you provide services to everyone, CPA services, accounting, fractional CFO services, you guys have a full team down there. How do they contact you if they want your help?
Yeah, so the best way we have is you can send an email to info@mpkadvisors.com. Also, definitely visit our website, mpkadvisors.com. We have our full list of service offerings there. I think, well, I'm biased, but I think our website is pretty fresh, new, and speaks to our mission and our vision and goals, and lays out that so you could get a background for what we're aiming to do. Our tagline is, we have two. One is the heart of accounting, but also helping you make more confident financial decisions. Yes. As our purpose. So that's really our aim, is to bring, that consultant mindset of, say, a Bain or a McKinsey, to the small people who may not be able to access that or have any idea what kind of impact that could have on them, and to bring some tools into their business, financial analysis, operations that will be defining for them to shape that going forward.
And you serve everyone. You serve anyone in California, correct?
Yeah, so we serve, definitely everyone in California. We have what's called CPA mobility. So most states we can practice in.
Okay.
Especially with tax, most states allow for what's called mobility. And so we can practice in just about every other state without gaining an additional licensure requirement, because California maintains more of the higher standards already. So we do have many out-of-state clients as well. But yeah, like I said, our overarching theme is more proactive, more advisory, more forward-thinking, whether you're a business, individual, or a nonprofit.
I really ask anyone who is involved in a nonprofit that does not have the type of help that Michael provides to reach out to Michael and talk to them. Get the help. Make sure you're running that nonprofit correctly. The for-profits too, reach out to Michael, but nonprofits, there's not a lot of, like Michael said, there's not a lot of CPAs that are interested in helping you, but Michael is. So don't be scared to reach out to Michael. He's a very nice guy, as we have seen, and extremely helpful. And, just listening to his background today, like I said, I always knew he was smart, but I never knew his pedigree of Berkeley and working for the State Department, negotiating with all these other countries, and that was only when he was 22. And now he's had so many more years experience. Michael, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Pietro. It's been great.
All right. So join us next time and on The Price of Civilization. Thank you for tuning in today's episode. If today's conversation sparked new ideas about tax strategy, or if you have a tax issue, please comment below or click the link to set up a conference with my team. Please tune in next time, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a review.